All right. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Marketplace Mavericks. And today I am here with Corey Ganim. Corey is probably my most look forward to guest on this so far because Corey was actually the very first person I saw on YouTube when I started looking into Amazon because somebody told me about Brand Direct. So I immediately Googled that. It was actually at the time, Corey was still just an Amazon, and his videos introduced me to Brand Direct. And then I realized I had to walk before I ran. So I ended up going with Miles' program for OA first. But welcome to the show, Corey. Awesome that you got to join me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. And I mean, I think you did it the right way, right? I think talking about walking before you run, I think everybody should do some sort of arbitrage before they jump into wholesale, especially brand direct, because it's like you got to learn the platform, learn how to ship an FBA shipment, like, all the basics that I feel like people try to shortcut, but you really shouldn't. So I think you did it the right way.
Yeah. And, I did OA just long enough, and I knew the entire time that I couldn't stand OA. It is the absolute opposite of my personality, opposite of my strengths, opposite of everything. So brand direct was really where I really enjoy talking to brands, creating relationships. It's a little bit more personal for me. And
Yep.
I was also somebody that when I got into Amazon, I came from a very traditional brick and mortar, old style business, had next to no computer knowledge. I had to learn how to create a PDF and how to submit it. Oh, I knew absolutely nothing.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, if you ever ask Miles about me, he will laugh about, I think it took me, well, it takes everybody an entire day to set up their label printer. But it was rough for me in the beginning. I was kind of learning two things at once. And really, once AI started coming around and being prevalent, I was at first really afraid to use it because I wasn't any good at computers. And I downloaded ChatGPT, started playing with it and just talking to it. And I realized within about 10 minutes that AI and ChatGPT, now, I've moved over to Claude also, but it is really, the less you know about computers, the more AI is helpful almost. I think it's helpful for everybody, but you don't need to know anything about computers in order to start using it. I simply just started talking to it. And
exactly.
It went on from there. The first thing I noticed I was able to set up is I had a horrible time trying to set up Slack and workflows and all that stuff for my VA. And the first time using ChatGPT, within 2 hours, I was able to really set up my Slack. It was a lot of copying and pasting. It couldn't connect to Slack or anything like that. But it showed me real quickly on a Sunday afternoon that the game was changing. And you obviously saw that too. So yeah, tell us a little bit about kind of what you're doing and how we can help and how it can help any business, but more specifically, we're going to talk about brand direct today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as like what's required to get value out of AI. I mean, really, you just need to be able to have a conversation with it. You don't really need complex computer skills. You certainly don't need to know how to code or to be a developer, right? I don't know how to do either of those things. So if you can have a conversation and know which questions to ask, you can get a ton of value out of AI. Now, so a framework that I like to think about as far as like getting the most value out of AI are kind of like the levels with which you can use AI. Really 4 different levels at the end of the day, right? Level 1, which is kind of your foundation, is just learning how to prompt it correctly. Now, prompt engineering, you might have heard that term before, not as important today in 2026 as it was, a year or 2 years ago. You used to have to tell the AI like, hey, act as Alex Hormozy and give me sales advice, or act as, XYZ person and give me advice that they would give. Now, prompt engineering it's not as much of an art anymore. You can just say, hey, give me sales advice, and it's going to give you pretty much the best sales advice that you could ever get, because it's going to know who to pull from, right? Like you don't really have to you don't have to engineer the prompt as much anymore. But that's level 1, is just basic prompting knowledge, basic knowledge of how to get output out of AI from a simple input, right? Level 2 is workflow automation. That is simply automating everyday tasks using AI or even using just workflow automation tools like a Zapier, like a make.com. Those are inherently not AI tools, but AI has made regular workflow automation a lot easier and a lot more accessible to the everyday person. So that's level 2, is just, can you automate a simple 2-step process? Right? Most people can get to level 2 within like a week of talking to ChatGPT or Claude. And then you've got level 3, which is vibe coding. That's where you're building, dashboards in Claude Code, or you're building a little lightweight SaaS or software application using Codex, right? Just anything that you're like, hey, I wish I had this software tool for my team, or I wish I had this internal capability. You can go and with natural language, what's called vibe code that using Claude or using ChatGPT. And then the final level, the highest level, level 4, is using agents, right? Agentic orchestration, whatever you really want to call it. Now, so these 4 levels, I actually didn't come up with them. This framework is from a guy called Boring Marketer. He came up with this probably 7 or 8 months ago. And, level 4 being the agentic orchestration, working with AI agents, I would actually argue that level 4 is now level 2, right? It's a lot easier to work with AI agents today in, late April 2026 than it was 7 or 8 months ago. 7 or 8 months ago, AI agents were like, you had to be a little technical to use them, or like there was still some mystery to them. But now we've got tools like Claude Cowork and Manus and all these other agentic tools that are a lot more accessible to the everyday person. So I know that was like a big brain dump, but those are kind of like the 4 levels that I look at AI usage from. And I think anybody can get to level 4, which again, you could argue is now level 2 in a matter of 2 to 4 weeks of just messing around with it for 20 minutes a day.
It seems like that's the rate at which it is progressing is hard to keep up with, because I know, God, 8 months, probably the same time frame, probably about 8 months ago, I paid somebody $1,000 to build an informational website for my brand direct business.
Yep.
Okay. It was decent, better than what I could do. And then as I looked at it more, it was kind of clunky, didn't look great. I hopped on Manus and I put in my website. I think I used Patterns and one other to give it something to
as
compare
like
it to.
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes, I had a website. It built me a website better than mine.
Right.
In 10 minutes. I spent another 34 minutes to an hour tweaking it, but I wasn't tweaking the layout or how it looked. I was just tweaking the content in it. And
right.
In less than an hour, I had an absolutely beautiful website. And I don't think that wouldn't have been possible 7 months ago for someone like me. And that's when I really saw the fast it's moving.
It's moving so fast. And I mean, to your point, right? Like I think one thing you did really well there is you gave it references to kind of go off of, where I think people make a mistake of like, oh, AI is not that good, or it didn't really work for me. It's because they expect it to perform magic. They say like, hey, build me a perfect website in 10 minutes and that's it, right? They don't give it any context. They don't give it any references to go off of. But as you found out, if you just give it the bare minimum of like, hey, here's 2 websites that I really like, build my website similar to these in terms of style or colors or fonts or whatever part you want to emulate, it's going to do a 100 times better job than if you just gave it nothing to go off of. So that's like best practices in general.
And I think, in circling back around to in the brand direct space, and I'll use my business as an example, I am fully FBA and I am brand direct. I have come into luck and I source a lot of high priced items. I don't shy away from lower priced items, but all of my best sellers are high priced items up over $200. My SKU level is small. I don't have a big catalog. My back end work, my administration type work is very little, unlike an OA person who might have 2,000 SKUs. Mine is very small. I don't deal with messages because I'm all FBA. So a lot of the headaches I don't have. On the flip side, with brand direct, as you know, it is all about creating relationships and showing value. And that's what we talk about. I talk about almost all the time on this podcast. And it's what it's what I excel at. And that is where I'm seeing where I would like to start using AI more. I've used it in small points of working with an account that doesn't have great pictures on them. I will create a couple lifestyle pictures. They're not perfect, but they're much better than what they have. And I'll email that to them. And when I'm building out A+ content and storefronts, optimizing listings for brands that I'm actively working with and in an exclusive with, I've still been using a graphic designer, which they are expensive. And it's looking like we are getting, it probably already is there, but because you sure don't need a web designer anymore.
Right.
And now the pictures aren't looking, before they were looking a little weird, that AI look to them. And now I'm starting to play around with it, and they're not looking like that anymore. They're just starting to, as people call that, AI slop.
Right.
Which is, that's only if you're not doing it right.
Right.
Or not using the right kind of AI. And I've started to notice, to start showing value to brands is where I've really started to want to bring AI in as far as pitch decks. And, I'm starting to have a couple exclusives now where I can get them in the next couple months, possibly do a little video clip for me. So, because I can imagine, and you did brand direct longer than I did, once you are able to show case studies to brands of, hey, look what I did with this brand and look what I did with this brand, that becomes unbelievably powerful. And Absolutely. That is where I think AI can really help. Because I sure don't know how to start making those just on my own.
Absolutely. So there's so many different directions we could go with this, but just like a couple of quick thoughts off the top of my head. Again, it's, as we're recording this, it's late April 2026. Are you familiar with, did you hear that, I guess it was last week, OpenAI came out with their new Image 2 model, their newest image model. Did you hear about that?
I heard about it.
So this new image model from the makers of ChatGPT. So previously, the best image model was Nano Banana 2, according to all the benchmarks, right? You look at any AI model benchmarks, Google's Nano Banana 2 was the gold standard. If you were creating AI images, you were using Nano Banana. Well, last week, OpenAI comes out with what they call GPT Image 2, and it beats Nano Banana on every benchmark by 200 points, which means nothing but in the grand scheme of things. But for context, that was the single biggest improvement from, a new model compared to the previous best model. Single biggest improvement in the history of image models, like not even close. So right now, GPT Image 2 is the de facto gold standard for images. Absolutely blows Nano Banana out of the water. So I've even seen on X, and like my business partner, Nick, he sells on Amazon. He's got an exclusive with a couple of brands. He's been using GPT Image 2 to fully redo their image stack. And John, I'm telling you, the images he's created with the new image model, they're stunning. Like they are gorgeous images to the point where, he's built a skill in Claude that essentially takes an old image. Claude generates essentially a prompt, an image brief that Claude generates, and then he copies that into GPT, and GPT generates the image. And these images are designer grade, perfect, ready to ship straight to Amazon. So right off the bat, that's one of the first things that comes to mind is like, now the cost and the barrier to entry is so low to doing that. Think about how much value you can add to a brand if you can just literally take their existing Amazon images, touch them up via GPT Image 2 and be like, hey, here are some updated images that I created for you. You can have them. Here they are. You're not going to say this, but it's like, hey, it costs me nothing. I have nothing to lose by giving this to them. By the way, if you want me to help you guys do this across your whole catalog, let's have that conversation. And again, these images, you can do them at such a high level that they speak for themselves. The brand owner is going to be like, wow, these look really good. Like, I think it's at least worth having a conversation around it, even what that would cost just to do across our other listings. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Another thing that comes to mind is you can actually connect Seller Central to Claude via what's called an MCP server. An MCP, it literally just means connector, right? So it's a third-party connector that allows you to connect Seller Central to Claude. Now, what does that mean? Like, what's the point of that? Well, that means that instead of having to dig through a bunch of reports and exporting a bunch of Excel spreadsheets to try to make sense of, well, how's my PPC performing? How many impressions am I getting on my brand direct listings? How are my sales doing? I can just go to Claude and say, hey, Claude, how is my PPC performance across this brand over the last 7 days? And Claude can analyze that data in Seller Central and just give you the answer that you need without you having to dig through all the reports. So there's a couple of different directions you can go with this. One, you could have Claude essentially build you a scheduled task that, hey, every Friday morning, I want you to analyze my last 7 days of sales and give me feedback on what my best seller is, and also give me an updated forecast on how many I should reorder so that I don't run out of stock, right? Because that was my biggest pain point. And that's any wholesale, any seller's, it's every seller's biggest pain point is like, how do I stay in stock on my best sellers? Because every day that I'm out of stock, I'm losing money.
Yep.
So of course there's forecasting tools that exist out there, but you can just have Claude give you that insight that changes every week so that you can stay on top of that. And you can be so creative with what you could do, but you could be like, okay, Claude, hey, I took over this brand exclusively in January of this year. I want you to look at the data of this brand's performance from January to today and give me all the metrics that have improved since I took over, right? Because there's metrics that you probably wouldn't even think to mention that Claude is going to know because it has access to Seller Central. So it's going to be like, well, sales are up 40%, but did you know that now you're getting 5 times the traffic to your listing than you were before? Yeah. And your conversion rate has tripled, and like all these data points that you wouldn't think of. And then you can then take those data points, use Claude Design, which is a brand new, feature from Claude as of the last week and a half, to then take those data points and have Claude Design build you a really nice pitch deck or slideshow or like case study document using your brand's colors or, your brand kit. And if you don't have a brand kit, you could just point Claude Design at your website and say, hey, build me a case study and use the same fonts and colors from my website to build the case study. So that way, when you give that case study to a new brand or a prospect, and then they go look at your website, they're like, dang, this guy, he's got it figured out. Like all his stuff's aligned, everything's dialed in. It looks way more professional.
Yeah. I think, because I've been thinking of I'm huge with value. I want to show a brand value. So if I'm in an exclusive with a brand or not, even if I'm not an exclusive with a brand, is I want to send them a monthly update. How many units we sold, how many, what the sales are doing for brands that I'm exclusive with and for brands that I'm trying to be exclusive with. I want to put myself, my big exclusive that I just closed and put transparency on today. I got that because I did what none of the other sellers were doing. And, it's a high sale price. I started almost buying everything they had. And eventually they just said, just take over our Amazon. And they had nothing to do with it. And it was because I showed value over and over and over again of what I could do for them. And, they're a close to 200K a month account now. Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, but that's when I came up with it, I said, man, if I could start giving all my brands a monthly report of what their brand is doing. And sometimes, I'm working with a brand that I haven't made much money on, and I'm close to an exclusive with them because the other sellers on the listing are big monster sellers who hog the buy box, and they do no advertising, and their biggest competitor is doing quadruple what they're doing and hurting their sales. Right. So I was able to kind of use Smart Scout and put together brand reports and show them the comparison. But that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, wow, if I can get AI to start doing this and start to auto generate, these brand reports once a month for all the brands I'm working with, to either keep an exclusive and keep a brand happy or keep on pushing for that exclusive. Because anytime I call a brand that I'm working with, I try to come up with reasons to contact them without bothering them. I never pay a purchase order online. I always call them because I'll have questions and I make sure if I'm giving them 20 grand, chances are they're going to answer some more questions for me and keeps me in touch with them. And that's the type of thing that AI is never going to take over. Right. That's the part of brand direct that I really enjoy. But I also think that is where I want to start really integrating AI to assist me with that.
Yeah. And you're spot on. It's like there are certain things that AI should never touch. And you are correct in that, John is always going to be the relationship guy. He's always going to be the one talking to the sales rep, calling him up, building the relationship. But then AI can do 95% of the stuff under the hood. And the brand doesn't care that AI is doing it because they're getting a really good experience. So one thing you mentioned, like generating a monthly report for brands, right? That's something that 100% you can automate with something like a Claude Cowork, right? You could create a scheduled task in Claude Cowork that runs once a month, connected to your Seller Central, pulls the same data every month, right? So you turn it into a skill, which basically means an SOP that the AI can follow. And every month on a schedule, it runs that skill, pulls the data, and you can have it, drop it into a spreadsheet, build a little lightweight report right there in Claude Cowork, which you can do a pretty good job of. Or if you want to, because I don't think there's a connection between Cowork and Claude Design at this point. So if you really want it to be like nice and branded, you could have the scheduled task in Cowork, pull the data, drop it into a report, take the report, drop it into Claude Design, which is literally just a drag and drop once a month. Boom, you've got your report, fire it off to the brand, and they've got all the data points on your performance from their brand over the past month. Or you could call what you would probably do. And this is a good way just to stay in touch. Like, it just gives you an excuse to call them once a month. Hey, Mr. Sales Rep, I've got this month's report ready to go. I just sent it over to you, and I figured I'd call you to kind of go through it, see if you have any questions, just break down what we're seeing on our end as a seller. Like, they would love that. And I guarantee you, nobody else is doing that, right?
No.
Nobody. So that's just an excuse to get in front of them and a way for you just to keep adding value. Like, hey, here's all the data in a format that's really aesthetically pleasing and easy for you guys to read.
Yeah, and it sure is. I mean, nobody is doing that. I'm big on, making Loom videos to compare, one listing that they have to what their competitors have. Those work really well.
Yeah.
But, being able to do the monthly reports to kind of, to give the brand a real idea of what is going on with them, because the brand that I'm close to and exclusive with, that has all the big sellers on there, they didn't really understand why they weren't selling. And I said, listen, I'm advertising, but I'm barely touching the buy box because of these huge sellers. Right. So my advertising is only going to kick in when they're not there. I said, if you want someone to grow your brand, these guys aren't doing the things to grow your brand. They're selling it at your MAP minimum, and they're just hogging the buy box. So it was a really and it was cumbersome for me to put that report together, and I showed it to them over Zoom, and it worked really well. But I did see right away, I was like, there's an easier way of doing this. There's an automated way of setting this up where I can look at it afterwards, but the bones of everything and the layout is going to be the same exact thing every single time. And I think that's where AI can be really powerful for brand direct, because it's not like where there's so many repetitive tasks over and over again. Brand direct is not like that. There's some, but not a lot, and not enough to where it's going to really bog you down.
Right.
It's brand direct, so you're not dealing with a massive catalog. You're usually dealing with brands. Brand usually doesn't have more than like 2 to 10 SKUs, maybe.
Yep.
In general, you're not going to run into too many small to medium-sized brands that are going to have 30 SKUs, and they're sure not going to all be selling anyways.
Right.
So I think a lot of that, along with like pitch decks and being able to do case studies, because I haven't been able to do that yet. In the next 6 months, I'll be able to, but I have to imagine those, when you're talking with a brand, are just so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, they are. And, something that would be cool that kind of just popped into my head is, so as far as like a case study, right? So I feel like everybody, when they've got case studies, they'll create like a slideshow out of it, or maybe it's like like a PDF. But I mean, realistically, that's just kind of boring because like everybody does it. So it's like, how can we create case studies that, one, are compelling, and two, actually stand out? Like, people that are like my target brands that I'm going after, makes them actually want to consume the case study, therefore trust me more. Well, I mean, think about it. You could spin up a website or like a landing page using something like Claude Code that, again, it's branded. It uses your colors, your fonts, your whole brand kit. And it's got, maybe like a little video testimonial from one of your brands. Like, maybe you ask the brand owner or your sales rep there, hey, do me a favor and record 30-second video just talking into the camera about what it's like working with me and how I've helped you. And maybe on the website that you build in Claude Code, it's like, you've got the video on there, you've got some quick stats, but it's not just like a static website. Like, you can animate it in some way, or like even like gamify it, like have like a progress bar at the top. Like the further they get through the case study, the more the progress bar. So like, of course, these are just like random ideas I'm coming up with off the top of my head, but I think AI lets us experiment with things, and like, it's just easier to do things to stand out, because like design and like technical capability isn't the bottleneck anymore. It's like, really,
No.
it's just your imagination. It's like, what can I think of? Like, what idea can I come up with that would be unique and different? And then that's the bottleneck. If I can come up with the idea, I can build it in a couple of hours in Claude Code, and I don't need to know how to code to do that. Right. So again, that was just kind of like a quick idea that popped into my head. It's like, how can we create some really cool, unique case study asset that is interactive, or that's like fun or compelling, more so than just like a PDF, like a boring slide, or like a, slideshow.
Right. And I agree. That's not the bottleneck. And when I first started playing with it, with pictures or websites and stuff like that, the bottleneck was the graphics just, sometimes they just wouldn't line up and it just looked off. And you get to a point where like, I can't fix it. Like,
right.
That is what it is. You can try to tell it to fix it and it just makes it worse. And what I noticed when I built the website a couple weeks ago was that wasn't the issue. Like the graphics, the layout, it was perfect in 5 minutes. It was just about me changing what I wanted to change. And I wasn't afraid to change some graphics because it didn't make everything else off. So that's what made it so quick, is because all I was doing was playing with the content. I didn't need to play with the graphics, the layout to get it right. I didn't have to tell it 25 times to do something and it just couldn't get it right.
Right.
So I think that, in relieving those bottlenecks, that's where we're really going to be able to excel with like graphics. And I think probably for brand direct people, the time of being able to do the pictures and stuff like that is the biggest value. Because as soon as I saw that website, I'm like, oh man, what I can do with, my exclusives and build A+ content. I was like, I'm going to be able to not have to use my VA who doesn't work for me. He just works per diem.
Mm-hmm.
I have a rock star VA who could learn this and do it herself, and have my in-house person do it. And it's gotten to the point where it's good enough where I can put that on an exclusive and be proud to have that on there and not look messy. Because before they were okay, I could make one through ChatGPT to send it to a brand real quick to show some value. But when it was time to actually build A+ content and stuff like that, I still felt like I needed to spend the extra money with the graphic designer in order to make sure that it looks right. And I think you don't need that anymore.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, really, if you have a VA who's competent enough to know how to use these tools and iterate with the AI, I mean, that's going to be a huge asset, right? It's like, you don't need to necessarily handhold them through everything. If they have the agency to essentially ask the AI for guidance when they need it versus coming to you for everything, that's a huge asset in terms of like an employee to have.
Yeah. My VA actually, I think I got the idea, well, from you. I think it was one of your podcasts. I think it might have been when you did a webinar with Miles and you talked about loading in all of Amazon's policies.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's easy enough. So I did that. I loaded in all of Amazon's policies, and then I set up a schedule for it to rescan every Monday morning and update any policies that have changed. And now my VA uses that as like the hub for any questions she has with Amazon, especially
that's awesome.
Ungating, dealing with cases. She'll copy and paste back and forth with the cases, how they want to do that. So that has become like super, super valuable to have that in there.
So you bring up a good point there. So I'm assuming you basically took all the Amazon's policies and you put them into a Claude project, right?
Yes.
Is that kind of where it's sitting?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we can touch on that, because that's been a huge unlock, like for me and my assistant as well. So for people listening, if you're not familiar with Claude projects, ChatGPT has their own version of it. It's called custom GPTs, but it's the same concept where a Claude project is kind of just like it's a silo of context, right? So for example, I have like a marketing strategy Claude project. So within a Claude project, you can give it what's called project knowledge. which are just files or data, like any context that you want to make sure it never forgets between sessions. So like John, for your example, right, you've got your Amazon policies project. So you give the project all the data on Amazon's policy once. And then anytime you're working within the project or asking questions within the project, before answering, Claude is always going to go and read all of Amazon's policies that you gave it first. So it's just a way to silo context, right? So some people have like a marketing project and an operations project and a sales project. And anytime they've got a question or they're working inside one of those functions, they'll do it inside that project. So like, for example, with my assistant, right, kind of like assume probably a roadblock that you were running into, John, or a lot of people run into, is that it's like she's awesome. Like she's an A player. She has agency. Like she'll go out and get stuff done. But there's some times where like she genuinely needs to ask a question or she needs more context before she feels confident to take action. And what I was finding is that I'm like, I really wish, like as good as she is, I wish she had even more context at all times to where, you know, if she's coming to me 10 times a week, I'd love for her to come to me twice a week, right? And so it's like, well, how do we do that? So we built her a Claude project that has like 11 or 12 different context files, but it's everything specific to like me because she's my personal assistant. Like, so we've got a context file for like my travel preferences, right? Everything like from I like aisle seats to book Hilton hotels to I like to fly at, you know, early afternoon, like all my travel preferences. We've got another context document inside that project that is our gifting preferences, right? Anytime we need to give a gift to, like, for example, I did a podcast interview 2 weeks ago with a host that I want to build a relationship with. So when I tell my assistant, hey, let's get him a gift so that we leave a good impression, she doesn't have to, we don't have to go back and forth. Her ask me like, well, what gift do we give him? How much can we spend, right? She can literally just go into that Claude project and be like, hey, we need to order a gift for so-and-so. What should I get him? And it's going to read those documents that we created that one time. And boom, she has the instructions. She can go and execute. So that's the whole idea is like for anybody listening to this, if you're doing brand direct, I think it would be really smart to have one Claude project per brand that you're working with. Yeah. Now that's per main brand. Like if you're just like flipping one or two SKUs from a random brand, not necessary. But like John, for you, your exclusive brand, right. 100% you should have a Claude project dedicated to that brand with all the context needed. So it's like, hey, here's a document that has all my key contacts. Like this is their names, their position, their contact information, their like anything I know about them, right? And then another document for here's the main products, right? This is my bestseller, this is the second bestseller, et cetera, et cetera. And you could probably think of like 5 or 6 really good context documents to feed that project. So now anytime John needs to, you know, work within the context of that brand or your team needs to work within the context of that brand, they do it inside that project and it's going to be way more efficient and they're going to have all the context needed at their fingertips right away.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because, you know, not your small stuff, but your, you know, this brand is like my foundation of my business.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's real important, everything that goes in there to stay on top of. And yeah, I think having a VA, because, you know, my VA came to me and she was nervous because I think a lot of her friends are losing their jobs.
Right. I believe it. Yeah.
You know, and I told her, I said, listen, Chris, I said, you're fine. I was like, you're not a data inputter. You're doing real things for me. I was like, what we need to be is we need to get a hold of AI and use it. And it's going to assist you. I was like, I have no intention of ever getting rid of you. The difference is that chances are we shouldn't have to hire you any help, you know, for a data entry person. It's going to be just you and you're going to be able to take more of a workload because of AI. And that's where your value is going to be, is because I have you and you're able to work with AI and be proficient with it. I now don't have to hire an assistant for you to do a bunch of data entry. I was like, and that's where the value is going to be. And, you know, that's when, and as soon as I said that to her, and she's a very good VA, very proactive. She has agency. She immediately started diving into AI. She loved what I did with the, you know, putting all the policies into it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with it just today, I used it a whole bunch because I had to and role in transparency. And I was going to have my VA do it, but I am someone where I need to do something once because I still need to know the basics of it because you know, if all of a sudden she quits tomorrow and I don't know how to log into the transparency portal, I'm in trouble. So, you know, I was using Claude while doing it, and it helped me a lot. She had to change to a GS1 UPC, and she's like, I've never done that before. And that's where she used Claude a whole bunch. She was familiar with it. She's like, I know it's going to be a bit of a headache with Amazon to do. And it took a couple of weeks to do it back and forth. But using that project gave her, she said, it gave me a ton of great ideas on how to attack it. You know, because she had, you know, we had to make a new listing and then merge the listings together and all this and she knows how to do all that. But Claude was the one that kind of gave her the path to use, and Amazon accepted it, you know?
Yeah.
So it was really powerful that way.
Right. And I think you make a good point. It's like, we're always going to need really good people. And like, if you have a really good person on your team, like if anything, they're a bigger asset now than they were before AI, because if you can get them to use AI effectively, then you've got a really good person multiplied by 10, because now that really good person can do the job of 10 really good people with AI as their assistant. And like my assistant, same thing. Like I could tell at one point she was getting a little anxious because obviously everything I'm doing is in AI, and she knows that. And she was like, she didn't say it, but I could tell.
You can tell.
Well, you know, what does this mean for me? Like, you know, are you going to replace me? And it's like, absolutely not. If anything, we're going to kind of upskill you so that you learn how to use AI effectively. And we can also take a lot of the stuff off your plate that I know you don't like doing, give it to AI, and then have I kind of pitched it to her as like, look, you're going to be the manager of the AI agents. Like, if anything, you got a promotion in the sense that you're no longer doing the grunt work, you're managing the AI, and the AI is doing the grunt work. Right. And like a great example of that is we had a workflow like a year ago where she was doing a ton of manual, like searching for podcasts in our niche that we could like pitch to go on and be a guest. Right. So that's something that takes a lot of time, a lot of research. She's got to go through a bunch of results, dig through a bunch of garbage. And it's like, look, now you don't have to do that. Now we can build 4 or 5 skills that chain together. The AI can go and do 10 times the amount of work in 10% of the time. But where you fit in is you're the one kind of curating the results, right? Because if the AI finds us 50 podcasts, 45 of those are probably going to be good, but there's going to be 5 that we don't want to reach out to. So like you're now the filter, and then you're the one kind of guiding the AI on, you know, what good looks like, and then helping it course correct when it gets off. So like now she's doing higher level work, and she's not doing the grunt work that she didn't like in the first place. So when I kind of explained it to her that way, I think she felt really reassured, and if anything, motivated to be like, okay, well, yeah, I do need to learn this stuff because it's going to make me more effective and more valuable. And, you know, she's going to make more money long term if she gets in front of it.
Yeah, that was exactly what my VA said. I said, no, I want you to dig into AI and start to learn it more and more and more. I was like, it's going to help your job and solidify what you do.
Right.
As kind of like the manager of the AI, and you're going to save me money because I don't have to hire somebody else that you then have to manage.
Right.
And, you know, she loved that. She was all for that once she kind of knew that like her job was okay, but she needs to stay up with it and can't sleep on it.
Right. Exactly.
So kind of wrapping things up, where do you, and I won't even say 5 years from now because that is way too far away. Where do you see AI going for the rest of 2026? Because we have, you know, most of it left, and it's changed so much since January.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or maybe, you know, December. It's just, where do you see it going, and what are the big changes that you think are coming in this following year? Because I think anything past 6 months, it's like, we don't even really know what's coming.
Yeah, it's hard to project out. So I think there's like two main things that I see coming sooner than later. One is like right now, like Claude Code and Codex and like these, you know, the top of the line models, they're really good at what's called browser automation, right? So they can use the browser and go do things on the internet like me and you could as humans. Because before those capabilities, the only way for AI to really interact with other tools is via API or like via connector, which means like there's a direct connection. There's very few things that can go wrong because it's essentially piped right into the software. So they're already really good at browser automation. It's gotten 10 times better in the last 3 months alone. So I think by the end of the year, these models are going to be like, there's going to be very little that they can't do in the browser. So it's like, if there's not, let's say like if Claude doesn't have a direct connector to XYZ software, previously that was a deal breaker. It's like, oh, we got to find some workaround. But by the end of the year, if there's no direct connector, if there's no API, I think the models are going to be good enough. It's like, well, no worries. Claude can just fire up Google Chrome and just log into the website and do it like normal, right? Like, I think that's very close. And when that's here, that's going to, I mean, there's nothing you can't automate if that's a possibility, right? Like you could literally automate anything once browser automation is to that level. And at the pace we're going, like, I don't see that not being a thing by the end of the year.
Yeah,
so that's
the first time I used CoWork and I started it and I downloaded the extension. And
yeah, and it's really good, right?
Yeah, it started moving. I'm like, oh my God, it is happening.
Yeah.
Like, in 6 months, like, I was like, I might not need a keyboard anymore.
Right.
And just
yeah, and even like
talk to it.
Even 2 or 3 months ago, like it was good, but it would get stuck on some basic things. But like now it's
just
it's like significantly better. And that was, that was January compared to April. Like April compared to December, I think it's gonna be solved at that point. And then
it was so fast. And then it started rethinking. If it didn't do something right, it didn't kick me back and say couldn't do it or error. It said, oh, let me fix that, started rethinking, and then like figured it out.
Right. And then, so I think that's the big like prediction. And then the second one is I think we're going to have the grandma has an AI agent moment by the end of this year. So like kind of the first iteration of that was back when OpenClaw, which I'm sure you're familiar with, when that blew up in January, like that was a huge moment in the sense that like it was the first time people got a taste of like what these agents can do. And like not just developers who are in the weeds, but like, and you still have to be technical to use OpenClaw, but like it just opened up that people's eyes to that capability that previously had never seen anything like it. So like that was a huge transition moment. But there hasn't been that moment yet for like truly the everyday consumer, like my grandma, like it's just not there yet. So I think whether it's this year or next year at the latest, there's going to be that moment where whether it's OpenAI or Claude or like some company's going to come out with the first like truly consumer friendly, consumer mainstream version of an AI agent that's just going to either be on your phone or it's going to be like the Google of AI agents where like truly everybody uses it.
Yeah.
And so I think once that happens, then like AI is already mainstream, but that's what's going to put it into the stratosphere. Like that's what's going to make the agentic workflows mainstream. Because right now chat is, but that's not even like 10% of what AI can do.
Right. And let me tell you, I that OpenClaw, it sure made it so I just ordered a Mac Mini and it's taken 5 months to get to me now.
Yeah, we got, so it's funny because my partner, he's really technical. Like he was a developer for like 10 plus years. And so OpenClaw came out, I think it like officially came out. It was like first week of January, like January 3rd or something like that. And I think he just like happened to follow Peter, who's the founder, like the creator of OpenClaw. And so he caught on to it early. I remember it was day 2, like OpenClaw came out on say the 3rd, like literally the next day he's DMing me being like, dude,
order a Mac Mini.
He was like, I just tested out this new agent. Like this is going to be big. Like this is going to be crazy. So he was like, I'm going to mess around with it and then I'll get back to you. So like, I remember he like built one and he called her Annie and then he put her, I think he hosted her locally, but like he put her in our Discord server so I could talk to her too. And so, like 4 days into, it was still like nobody knew about it. Like it was completely unknown, but I'm chatting with Annie and like, literally 2 days later, I was like, I could not imagine my life without this technology. Like it was that revolutionary to me. Like that quickly, I realized I'm like, this is going to be huge. And then, it was probably 3 weeks later, because I remember I was at an event in Florida at a workshop and I was doing a presentation to a small group on OpenClaw. And it was literally like that day, that morning is when it started to go super viral on X. And like 2 days later, it was like, that was all anybody was talking about. Like it was like the stars aligned where it's like, we tried it out just early enough to where we had like a 2 week head start on everybody else, to where I was doing a little workshop on it, like literally the day that it blew up. It was like perfect timing across the board. But that's kind of was my first taste of like a true, aside from Claude co-work, like OpenClaw was like the true taste of like, this is where things are going and where they could be. And it's like, again, it's going to be crazy what happens in the future.
And we're not even 6 months into 2026. That's the crazy.
No, this has all been of the last like 4 months.
It's only April. And that's already happened. That's why I never, my dad asked me the other day, he's like, what's this AI going to be like in 2 years? I was like, I was like,
no, it's not even worth like
speculating. You can't think of it that way. I was like, ask me in 2 weeks or 2 months and it's going to be different.
So you got to think in like 30-day timeframes with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I see guys stacking Mac minis up and using them that way. And it did something, because mine's going to take 4 months to get to me now. So
I saw a headline, it was yesterday, that like, I think it's like the base model Mac mini or one of them is backordered for like 6 months.
Yeah. Price went up too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, makes sense.
I mean, I can't blame him on that one, but price went up, and that's just part of, the energy that it takes to do this. Well, everyone, this was fantastic. I think it gave a really good look into brand direct. Anyone else who's doing brand direct, I had a couple of guys ask me with brand direct, they're like, and they have similar models to mine. They're like, my admin stuff, there's not all that much. I was like, I barely need a VA for it. I was like, you're right. I don't need very much admin stuff. There's just not a whole lot of repetitive tasks over and over and over again, like a heavy OA guy would use, or an RA guy, or someone that does a ton of FBM. I was like, we don't deal with any of that. I was like, but where AI is going to really help in brand direct wholesale is how to add value. And I think that's where in the next couple of months, I really want to get into how I can add value, how I can put together a lot of visual things, I think, for the brand direct, because anybody in brand direct just knows like bringing value is how you get your exclusives, and being able to put a really, really impressive listings together. And AI is now, it's able to do it now. So
the point that I'll end on, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that, is like, so when we talk about AI, or like deciding whether to use AI, or like what kind of ROI you can get, there's 3 kinds of ROI. There's effectiveness, which is this going to make me more money? Efficiency, is this going to save me time? Or quality, is this going to increase the quality of my product or service? And I mean, you nailed it. Like in brand direct wholesale, it's the quality lever. It's like AI. Is it going to save me time? Sure, a little bit here and there. Is it going to make me more money? Sure, like in a way, but really where it's the ROI that you're going to get out of AI in a brand direct business is increase in the quality of the product or service, right? It is the easiest way for you to add a ton more value and elevate yourself above the competition, which you could argue leads to effectiveness, makes me more money. So in my mind, it's less of a time saver in this business. It's more of a make me more money and increase the quality of my.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to put all of Corey's links. He's on Instagram. For all you brand direct people that don't use LinkedIn, you should really start using LinkedIn, because you use LinkedIn a ton for a business. I use LinkedIn a ton, not just for my business, but I love stalking brands on LinkedIn, and I find all kinds of different emails and phone numbers to get a hold of people. So we're going to link your LinkedIn, your Instagram, all your different avenues, because you are out of the Amazon space, not because you didn't make money on it, but because, you saw an opportunity with this AI, and it was time for you to make the switch. And it seems like you're doing pretty well at it. So far, so good.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't have a boss.
It. Right. Yeah. I still
that's
have a
the
boss.
Goal.
So.
You don't have a boss. And that is all of us entrepreneurs, business owners. As long as we don't have a boss, we are doing something right. So,
right.
Yeah. Corey, thanks so much for coming on today. We're going to link all your stuff in the description. And we'll be back next week. Next week, I might have a podcast for you guys. I might not. I'll be going down to the Miami Sellers Conference for the first time to check that out, to see all the guys down there. But until next time, guys, I will be back.